Listeners be advised. The Soliloquy podcast discuss matters related to the human experience and many that are sexual in nature. Due to this, some conversations may surround triggering topics such as sexual violence, self-harm, abuse, and much more. Please be advised, a list of crisis and psychological resources will be available in the show notes of this episode. With that said, let's get started with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions.
In the event that there is a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen mask will drop from the overhead. Place the mask over your nose and mouth. Breathe normally as oxygen is flowing even if the mask is not infused. Be sure to adjust your own mask before helping others.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soliloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. This is your favorite host, Vernon T. Scott, also known as Slaytor Jackson, and also for you freaky motherfuckers out there, Sebastian Adams. On today's episode, we are talking about, going to work. We got this 9 to 5. We have to do all these things. Hold up. No, we're not. We're talking about that sexy shit. We're talking about sex work, and we're going to dive deeply into that. And on today's episode, I am blessed to have Meliza with me. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you. Look, y'all, this is the Talkative Introvert, and I'm happy to have her with us. Do you mind telling everybody about your podcast, telling them about yourself? Just let everybody get to know you.
Yeah. So, I host the Talkative Introvert podcast. We talk about all things introversion, but also I've opened it up to really just talk about whatever we want, anything. And I've had guests on talk about different things. I have an episode recently about teen mental health. I have new ones coming out. One with a stand-up comedian, Shane Rogers, if you know him. We talk about all kinds of stuff, body dysmorphia, emotional intelligence or emotional baggage or stuff like that. I don't know, all kinds of things, but yeah. And a little bit about me. I'm a talkative introvert.
Love it. I definitely recommend y'all listen to our podcast. Oh, I listened to that question and answer episode that y'all had. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And I never thought about actually going to what's that site called? Was it Reddit? Yeah, Reddit.
Yeah,
And
it was
looking up
Reddit.
relationship questions and stuff like that. And I'm like, that was smart. That was extremely smart.
Thanks. Yeah, we were like, what are we gonna talk about? And then I was like, well, let's go to Bailey was leaking. Oh, my friend Bailey, who was on the episode, she's a frequent guest. She was like, let's, go to Reddit. People ask questions all the time, so why can't we answer them?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I remember just listening to everything. I was in the line for what was I think I was going to Long John Silver's to get dinner and whatnot, and I was like, you know what? Let me just not get this food, and I literally just went driving for a little while, just finished up the episode before I actually stopped and got food.
Oh,
It's very informative, y'all. Definitely recommend that episode. It came out in May. The end of May, wasn't it? Or was it
I don't know
beginning of
anymore.
June?
Once it's out, it's out.
Right. Y'all go back. Just listen to everything. Binge it.
Oh, thank you.
It's a wonderful podcast, y'all. It's wonderful. On that note, we are here to talk about sex work, and I know we did talk about it in a lot more detail within the intake meeting. And one of the topics we are going to go into is the decriminalizing sex work. But before we go into that, what are your personal views on sex work in general?
So, we did talk about a little bit before the audience. I personally believe in decriminalizing sex work. I came from a very religious background. And so sex was not talked about. It's kind of a taboo. Sex was, it was mainly for marriage and having babies, like that's the main purpose. There's not really pleasure involved. And so I had that mindset growing up that people who are in this industry are, it's just a heinous act, like they're dirty, they're terrible people, they're sinful and all this stuff. But like as I've grown older, and it really was college age when I took my human sexuality class. And even before that, like I was already stepping out the door from my church and like, thinking differently. And I realized like, sex is normal. It's something that we do. It's not just for babies or making babies. And there really isn't anything wrong with, necessarily sex work. And it's just work. Sex work is just work.
Yes, yes. And of course, I agree with everything that you said and have similar experiences, most definitely with my upbringing. I cannot say I was a very big church goer because Sundays were like the bane of my existence. However, when we did go to church, I did walk away with a little bit of a word. So I'm not that
Mhm.
much of a heathen, people. Don't judge me yet. If you're not judging me now, don't let that be the reason to judge. But definitely like even just the lack of sex education and just the thought that, oh, these people are just so like heinous, their
Mhm.
actions, their pornography is to like change your mind, to change who you are, make you somebody that you're not, to make you a lot more sexual, that you have to be very restricted and like tight ass, let's put it that way. And I'm like, looking at these videos, like, yes, they might turn me on, but I even like felt jealous of them in the sense that they are that open with people that they will be doing this on camera. And I'm like, for myself at the time, I'm not that brave to do that. And who am I to like say that they're wrong for doing something that me personally, I'm not brave enough to do. I don't have that level of confidence to do something like that. And that's one of the things that that made me admire sex work a lot more, is because of that vulnerability that they're providing for others who are engaging in their content.
Yeah. And also, like, on that, I feel like people are against sex work also because if their little girls or little boys or whatever watch, watch porn or watch these things, they're like, they're going to become strippers or they're going to become part of the sex work industry. And for me, like, even though I'm more sex positive and more open to it, like I'm still pretty conservative. Like I don't really wear super short dresses. And I don't know if that's from my conservative background, but like I didn't change me. I didn't go out and become a stripper just because I'm more sex positive. And yeah, like saying what you're saying too, like I think it's so, I don't know, is brave the right word to say that they're out there and doing that? Like I do admire their confidence. Like I
Mhm.
love the confidence and how it like shines through them. And I, yeah, admire that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I say definitely more on the very confident versus brave. Because we do like as a culture do use that word very frequently for things that are not like heroic. So
Yeah. I know. I'm like careful about using brave because it can be kind of negative.
right, right. So I know most definitely in California, it's like one of the hugest sex industries, especially within this country. So I do see that like it's not as criminalized there, but they do focus on sex trafficking as well, because I view those separately too.
Hmm.
Because sex trafficking is more so people who are being forced into sex work versus those who are sex workers, who are those who are doing this willingly, who want to do this, who are wanting to make money based off of their sexual expression, their sexuality, as well as because sex work is there's different types of it, which we can go into later. But I hate the fact that across the board, sex work does not have that support that most will find if they are in California. If we lived in like a just world, what would you think like the decriminalized image of sex work would be at that point?
So if we decriminalize sex work, what would it look like?
Hmm.
I think it would help reduce, sex trafficking, human trafficking, because that is a huge problem right now. Um, I'm sure it's a huge problem everywhere, but especially like in California and especially where I live, where like the epicenter of like human trafficking. And
Mm.
we have like, I don't know if people know this about, Sacramento, but there is like a huge gonorrhea and like syphilis issue here.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like well known, but it's a big problem because we are sorry, I know I'm going like off topic, but like our Sacramento, you kind of go through it when you're going like from south to north or north to south, and then we have all the major freeways all like bunched up and they all go through Sacramento. So like every hotel around the freeway exits, people just if you live here, you just know that.
The Soliloquy podcast focuses on the variability of sexual expression. When it comes to sexual expression, we often depend on pornography to illustrate how one must perform sexually. For those who have not learned this by now, the stuff you see in porn is not real. Pornography provides a singular perspective of sexual expression that is not often the reality we see during our own sexual encounters. The Soliloquy podcast is a conversation that takes you outside of the compressed box of what many know about sex. Some of the topics we discuss includes kinks, condom usage, status disclosure, and past sexual experiences. The Soliloquy podcast steps out on sexual norms and recognizes that the norm is not the only normal. Subscribe today and join the conversation.
Like every hotel around the freeway exits, people just if you live here, you just know that that's where prostitution and human trafficking happen, and you do see like cop cars all the time. But what?
Oh no, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say like in a just world, like I think there'd be less of that, like less of just like STDs and STI, probably like, sexually transmitted diseases. And I think that we would have safer spaces for workers too. And I know sex work isn't just prostitution, but that is like one of the biggest issues that we have right now. It's just, is that, but yeah, I think the world would be just safer overall for all the workers. Like having, I'm just like repeating myself. Sorry. I'm just like,
no, you're good. You're good. You are perfectly fine. But I do like that what you just told us about Sacramento, because that makes me think of like here in Georgia, Atlanta is a major spot for human trafficking too. Most definitely with it being an international, having an international airport, the biggest in this country, well, one of the biggest in the country, where people from overseas are still trafficking people through Atlanta. And on top of that, like Georgia in general is just like a huge place for human trafficking. Let's be real. Macon is another place where since it's the center of the pretty much the middle of the state, you have a lot of people who go through there to either traffic people. You can get to Florida through Macon by making one turn. You can get to South Georgia another way. You can go straight back to Atlanta, wherever it is. Like Macon is in a strategic place that is like 2 hours away from all major cities in this state. So that causes issues most definitely when it comes to locating people, locating victims of human trafficking and whatnot, because you don't know which route a person made. But I also agree that if sex work was decriminalized, that will reduce the amount of human trafficking, because think about when it comes to the decriminalization of marijuana. I don't know why that
Mm-hmm.
was so hard. That
It's a
reduced
big
the
word.
right. That reduced the amount of drug cases that was going around. Granted, there's still a black market for other
Oh yeah.
things, but that black market only exists because it's still federally criminal to have marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
But in states like Colorado, California, you have an increase in what profits. You also have a decrease in drug-related crime
Mm-hmm.
outside of marijuana. Uh, well, outside of marijuana, there's a little bit different. But in terms of
Right,
marijuana,
right.
there's a reduction of crime that way. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever you do transition that to like the human body in our sexual expression, I assume that there will be a decrease there as well,
Yeah.
because there's no market for it. There's no way that you can make bodies off of somebody else, make dollars off of someone's body without it being regulated
Right.
as a business. So I think that will make a huge impact, and as well as improve our sex education, because sex education in general is not funded.
Mm-hmm.
In decriminalizing sex work means that we can change the stigma behind it, which means we can change the stigma around sex education, making sure that's more comprehensive and more um, engaging throughout a child's life. Make sure that the parents have the tools that they need to have these conversations with their children, just in case if they don't want the school to do it, they can do it at home in a proper
Right.
and within context that's beneficial to them. But yeah, there's a lot that decriminalizing sex work can do for the country overall if we
Yeah.
made that decision.
Yeah. And that also extends, like, I know we talked a lot about decreasing human trafficking, but that extends to also rape victims who are sex workers, because right now, if someone is a rape victim, but they're also known to be a prostitute, like you can't really people don't take them seriously. Like the justice system doesn't take them seriously because they're already doing something illegal and they can't quite go to the justice system because then they're going to end up getting, I forgot what it is now. I don't think it's a fine. I think you actually go to jail for prostitution in California. I should have looked it up before.
It's
But
fine.
my bad.
No, you're good. But in many states, cities, it does lead to jail time, and the person who's paying for the prostitution doesn't really get that much time either. They just get a slap on the wrist. Even when it
Yeah.
comes to those who perpetrate rape, they get less time than someone who has been raped. Like in those situations, and that's
Mm-hmm.
unfair to that person. And one of the things I wrote on for my dissertation is how like when it comes to utilizing resources, public services, those people who have been victims of sex trafficking, how you have to change the language for people to actually take them seriously. You cannot call them prostitutes like in certain contexts, because let's say if it's psychological assistance that they're needing, their therapist is not going to take them seriously. They're not going to take their problem seriously. They're just going to think, okay, you are already a moral person. Whatever it's coming your way, you deserved it. And then when you have like the title of victim of human trafficking or victim of sex trafficking, a therapist will actually take them more seriously, try to treat their problems, try to treat their
Mm-hmm.
traumas and see what people can do to help them out. And the same thing happens with it's not the dissertation, but research. But
Right.
similar things happen when it comes to like the police force. We approach these things with our own human moral perspective that, oh, because we already criminalize the act of sex. On top of that, we're criminalizing the act of sex work. You're automatically seen as less than because of what you're doing. You're a criminal. So I'm not going to look at the fact that you were just raped. You shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. That's the mindset. You
Mm-hmm.
got what you deserved because you shouldn't have been breaking the law. You shouldn't have been having sex and being paid for it. So what happened there, it doesn't matter. You broke the law. So your trauma that you experienced in that moment doesn't matter to us.
Right. And it does make sex also just look bad. Like just the act of sex is just very negative. And I think that's a mindset I think we need to change. And I know that though, that mindset, I don't know if that will change because America actually is very, very religious. I think I can't remember, but I think like the US is like in the top 5 most religious countries in the world.
Yes.
Which I thought was insane because isn't the whole reason why they founded America was to go against like the Catholic Church of England or something like that. So
for religious freedoms.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting, and that's, it still plays a big role in our laws.
So I think this will be a great way to go into like the different types of sex work because like you mentioned earlier, it's not just all prostitution. And I know even some of the stuff that I do, well, I already know I'm a sex worker, so that's different. But like in terms of the other things I do when it comes to like sex coaching, that's considered sex work. Sex therapy is sex work. But the field of sex work is expanding so much outside of just being an entertainer that to me it makes it even a more reason why you should decriminalize it so that we can have these effective resources under the title of sex work that will all be protected. That like even when I think about like me in the business space and needing to advertise, I cannot advertise because it's so much things that's blocking me from doing that because it's considered sex work.
Yeah, I think there's so many new things that's now like part of sex work, that's part of that realm. And it's just kind of interesting because how do you determine what's legal and what's not? Because sex therapy is legal. You can have sex therapy and sex counseling, but why is that okay, but not the act of sex or like, pornography or, whatever. And so it's hard to like who gets to say what's good or not,
Exactly. And I don't think a lot of people even want to engage in that dialogue because it makes you have to think critically. Like what makes this thing outweigh that other? Because when it comes to film, we can have a sex scene in any type of movie. Okay, it has to be PG-13 up. Well, even for some of the PG-13 films, I think some of the sexually related things are a little bit too sexual for kids. But like you can have those kind of sexual acts in these films. And let's go like in some TV shows that are, rated for the mature audience, you have full on sex scenes going on. Yeah, you're not showing like vulvas
like penetration or like
you're not seeing the actual appendages of the people, but you can see the breast of women, the breast of men. You can see that they're grinding on each other. You can see everything that looks like sex, just not the penetration. So we're comfortable with blurring the line at the actual penetration of it, showing like a penis penetrating a vulva or anything like that. That's too uncomfortable for people, yet showing the act without the penetration is okay. Like, why is there a line there? If people want to indulge in that and enjoy that kind of content, let them do it. Personally, I love a film that engages me on all levels. So if I was watching a film that even showed the all aspects of the body, all aspects of the sexual experience, I'm going to love that film so much more because of that, because it's a lot more realistic than just, the surface level things, just the grinding of it all. Like, I get not all people want to do that, but of course, that's why you have those people who can act and act sexually in sex work,
Yeah. And in general, I think just Hollywood is just it's double standards, like Hollywood is just put on a different level, different standards. They have their own world. Like I feel like they just have different laws, because it is, what's the difference of that and porn? It's, we know exactly what they're doing, and they're, we still see the human body. And it's just, I was just thinking about like Hustlers, for example, that movie with like Jennifer Lopez and everybody, and people loved it. They liked, they shared the artwork, like the movies in on Instagram or like social media, and they're playing as strippers, and like, yes, they're actresses playing as strippers, and they can do that. But then if an actual stripper does that on their Instagram page, they can get blocked. They could, get their page taken down. Like it's considered sex work. And so like, why does Hollywood get to do that? But then an actual stripper who's an actual professional cannot do that.
Right. Oh, why you had to say strippers? Okay, so this is a shout out to my favorite stripper people. So if y'all want to go see her content, feel free to look at it. She's beautiful. She's like, I love her because she's very talented. Nicole the Pole Williams. Oh my God, sis is great. I saw this one video of her. It was her audition for Pour It Up by Rihanna. Sis was on the roof. Just, I'm like, girl is Spider-Man at this point. Like, how is she up there? Like, feet on the ceiling. Good God, girl. Like, love it. Love it. But like, even that can be too much for somebody. Yet you can watch the music video with her in it, doing everything that she's doing in that same video. And it's like, oh, well, that's a music video. It's fine. It's okay. But her doing this on Instagram is not. Like, I can clip the music video and share it, like you said. No problem at all. I can even promote it if I wanted to. No problem. But me doing my own individual performance, and putting that out there, wanting to promote that on these apps or whatever, is not going to go far. It might even get denied. It might even get me banned. All these things can happen, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So another thing, outside of, the advertisement side, the business side of, sex work, there is that important aspect of sex education. What you went into it briefly earlier, but what were some of your personal experiences with sex ed? Like, what kind of programs, what were some of the things you were taught, some of the narratives, the messaging revolved around sex that you had to unlearn when you took that human sexuality class?
So my first sex ed class was in high school, and it wasn't even a full semester. So, so school has 2 semesters. And so the sex ed portion of it was half a semester. So it's literally a quarter of a year that we even talked about it. And what I can recall from that, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in high school, but it wasn't very educational. Like, we learned about the different STDs and STIs. And I just remember vividly my teacher walking around. He had like this manila folder, and everyone's like, okay, what is this? And he put it down. Like, there was like 4 rows of desk, and he put like one on each, the front desk, and he just told us like to open it, look at it, and then pass it back to the person behind you. And everyone like got to look at it. And it was literally just nasty ass pictures of, like gonorrhea and syphilis and like just different STs and STIs. And basically it's just like a shock factor, I guess. I think that was, the strategy at the time. And it was basically saying like, if you have sex a bunch of times, this is what could happen to you. And it was just, it was nasty. It was gross. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, ew. But like, it didn't really teach us very much about the human anatomy. We didn't go into detail about like pregnancy, or like how your period works, or, when a sperm hits an egg, whole like ordeal, like all of that stuff. We didn't really talk about it. I think we watched a video on someone giving birth, but I think again, that's just kind of another shock factor. Like, look at this lady's vagina and how big it opens and a baby shoots out. Like, I don't think it really was very educational. I think that they were really just trying to shock kids into thinking like, this is like what can happen if you have sex too much or have sex at all. But we're all high schoolers. Like, I'm pretty sure majority of that class probably aren't even virgins anymore. So like, I don't know how helpful it was.
Right. I know, like, for my sex ed, if you can call it that, I think it was like 2 days. And we went to like this was middle school. I was in 7th grade. I remember going to like the auditorium, and I think everybody that was in 7th grade was there, or they did it by class or whatever. I don't know. But everyone's sitting in there. They had a little projector up there. They had notebooks for everybody. So they showed some pictures. They talked about condoms. They pretty much did a lot to scare people. Essentially, you get an STI, you're going to die. Essentially, that was the message that I received at the time. They briefly went over HIV, and of course, they said, if I remember correctly, there was like, these days HIV is no longer a death sentence, but be careful because you can easily get full-blown AIDS and die, or something of that nature. And I'm
Oh
like,
my God.
what are we talking about here? And then we all received the little booklets, which had some
Yep.
additional information. We had to like answer some questions. That I guess that was our little test, and then that was it. That was our sex ed, and nothing else. We did not even have any kind of discussion in high school about sex ed or anything like that. Luckily, I went to a high school that was focusing on health science, and when we learned the reproductive system, my teacher at the time, she went in because that was her thing. She was all anatomy and physiology. So we talked about a good bit of that, not necessarily diseases, but how the body works then.
Right.
Now, I would say that experience just did not help out at all. So I definitely had to learn on my own at that point. And I even looked at the program today, like what students in my county
Oh, you
are.
did.
Yeah, I'm big on it. Like, I want to make sure that they're learning the right material. And I would say the school district catfished me.
Oh my goodness.
So what ended up happening, I found the curriculum and I saw what they had. They had chapters that they were going over, and I'm like, okay, let me look at this resource and see what's going on. So I found the program that they're using, and I'm like, okay, they're doing comprehensive sex education. Look at you. I
Good.
love it. That's the catfish.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I look at the actual chapters to see what they're teaching these young kids these days. And the chapters were, I think chapter 14 or 13 was all about abstinence. The other chapter was about STIs. And then I forget what the other ones were about. I think they were doing 3 or 4 chapters from the book. And I'm like, this is essentially abstinence only education and not a comprehensive education, even though the program itself is very comprehensive. That's not helpful.
Right.
Yeah, like it's poor. It's poor.
Yeah. That's very unfortunate. Like, so we were talking about this earlier. I did take a human sexuality class in college. Loved it. Like, one of my favorite classes. Because it's just like so eye-opening. I think there's some parts of the class that maybe parents wouldn't want their high schooler to learn, which is fine. But it was very like comprehensive, had so much. It went through the anatomy, it went through everything, like all the sexual parts of your body, and not just your penis and vagina. There's so much more. And they talk about like how, like, when you have sex, what impacts other parts of your body too. And they talked about childbirth, like doing it naturally, doing it with like what are they called?
You talking about like water birth or epidurals?
Yeah, well, so they talked about, the traditional way that everyone does it, go to the hospital, but
Oh,
also with I
oh,
forgot,
Adula.
a doula. Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
Brain fart. Yeah, and so they talked about different options that you can have. They even talked about different toys. My teacher or my professor came in with this huge bag, and we're like, all the students were like, "Ooh, like what's in the bag?" And she's just like dumped it on the table, and it was just like all different kinds of toys. And she went over like what the different toys are, what parts of the body, or like what different things like stimulate you. And it was very like educational because you don't really think about that. I think growing up, like all I thought was like, well, there's a dildo and that's pretty much it. Like,
Right.
and there's just like so much more to it. And she talked about, just different stimulation, and it was such a good class. And it really talked about, like, because abstinence only classes just don't work. Like most of the students who are in that class or in high school probably already had sex. It's a little too late for them on that. And so we really just need to teach them like how to be safe and teach them about also birth control. That's another thing we talked about, was all the different types of birth control. I only thought there was just, you just take the pill,
Mm.
but there's just so much more to that.
Right. And even with the pill, like how the pill has different applications for different people. Like some people don't
Mhm.
take it for like to control their birth. Some do it because of skin care, or even just hormone balancing. Like there's so many things that proper sex ed can do to help people with their daily lives that we don't get to learn about because we're focusing on abstinence only. And one of the things that I learned recently, this was November of last year. I was looking into different articles to build up my content for the month, and I learned that one of the downfalls to abstinence and abstinence only programs is that whenever somebody abstains from sex, that actually lowers their sperm count, which means it makes it harder for them to actually, have feasible sperm whenever they are trying to engage in to, like build their families with their partner.
Right.
And
Mhm.
it's like, we're telling people that they should be abstinent only and also telling them that they shouldn't masturbate and stuff like that when this has real life consequences to that belief system. Most definitely for those people who do want to have kids, who do want to have families and whatnot. So you get to a point where you're ready, and now you have another obstacle because you chose to, you know, abstain for until you were married, or you were too afraid to, or felt ashamed to masturbate, that you prevented what the easier option because you were just so pent up or whatever it is. So it's like understanding and knowing the consequences of the things that we're teaching is very important, most definitely when it comes to sexuality.
Yeah, and that not just only making babies, but it also impacts your future relationships.
Mm.
Like, did you watch? I think it's like Love Something and Goop.
Oh yes, Love, Sex, and Goop.
Yeah,
Yes.
Love, Sex, and Goop. And I thought it was so fascinating because there's that one lady who couldn't really have sex, right? Like she was really closed off because of
Mhm.
like her trauma. And your body does stuff, right? It's trying to protect you all the time. And so if you have that childhood trauma, or if you have just that negative stigma about sex your whole life, and your body will react to that trauma. And
Mhm.
for that lady, she shut down, essentially her urethra closed up, and she couldn't really like do insertion because it was too painful. And that's just her body's reaction to her past and what she learned about sex.
Mhm. Like this when this is why I'm a firm believer that most definitely for people who are receiving therapy, to look into, like, to take a holistic approach to your body, because definitely you do have to work on the mental side, but just because you worked on the mental side does not mean that the body no longer remembers that trauma, because your body remembers. Your body will
Mm-hmm.
tense up regardless of how much you work through that problem through your therapy. Your body is going to react because that's what it's used to. It's trying to fight that. So even utilizing different, approaches to therapy, be it body work, massage therapy, seeing how that can help your body heal even more from whatever traumas that are, presenting itself in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, your soul, whatever it is. Just making sure that you heal yourself on like multiple levels. Most definitely when it comes to your interactions with your current or future partners.
Mm-hmm. And that's like a great example why we need sex therapists or sex counselors, is
Mm-hmm.
because there is trauma that people endure and it does impact their sex life.
And like that, I think that's, well, I know that's one of the main reasons that's making me want to go into sex therapy. Is just even from doing my independent research, or even in the drafting of my book and having conversations with other people, I learned how, like, I'm not the only person who has these traumatic experiences, but there's a large amount of people who have traumas that they have not addressed in their lives, most definitely sex related traumas. And a lot of the messaging that we received when we were younger, or even as adults surrounding sex, prevents you from recognizing that you've experienced something traumatic. That's like with there's a large portion of men who've experienced sexual trauma as like teenagers, because it was socialized that it was okay for, a guy to have sex with an older woman. No, that is not okay. That's considered statutory rape, and
Mm-hmm.
It's a traumatic experience that that child did not have to go through. But just having those kind of conversations is impactful to someone. And again, another reason why we do have to relinquish that stigma around sex. Another reason why sex work should be decriminalized is so that a lot more people can be exposed to the fact that, hey, this happened, it was not okay, and there's room for you to grow from that. Otherwise, you have a lot of people just repeating circles of trauma because they don't know how to escape it.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up about, little boys or young men, because there is this stigma, or there is, people don't really take them seriously. Like I remember Terry Crews during like the Me Too movement was talking about his truth about what he experienced. But I think it was like, so like Wendy Williams or somebody
Mm,
was like making fun of him, or like, like, she didn't take it seriously. And it's like, well, you still need consent no matter what gender you are.
mhm.
Consent is so important. And I think that's something we didn't really talk about. Well, I think we did talk about consent in high school, but we didn't talk about how it may be viewed differently depending on your gender, and that how we need to like think of it as a whole, that, it's your body, and that you should have the say of what you, whether people can or cannot touch your body, do whatever with your body.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Consent is important, people. On that note, I'll say this will be a great time to transition over to the Never Have I Ever segment. So let me pull a card. So,
Okay.
the question that, well, not question, what I have here is, never have I ever not pooped for more than 5 days. Oh, been constipated for 5 or more days.
You need to go see a doctor for 5 days.
But really though, definitely go see a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't, I will have to be on I have not experienced that. I'm grateful that I have not. Healthy bowel movements, people. I think if you get to like 2 days, it's probably time to start thinking about if you're constipated or not.
Yeah.
And there's home remedies. I think one of the things that people recommend is like coffee is a good thing to,
Mm-hmm.
help get the bowels going. Definitely do that. But
Get some prune juice.
oh yes, prune juice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I got excited by that. Because like my mind and taste buds went to cranberry juice. Prune juice is not that tasty. It's
Yeah,
not.
no. I
Uh,
think the only time though that was a problem for me was I was younger, and I
mhm.
think I went like on vacation with a bunch of girls, and we had to share one bathroom, and I was just way too anxious.
Mm,
And so yeah, that was the only time though. But I don't think it was 5 days,
right. I
maybe a
get that.
weekend.
I get that. That's like when I first went off to college. I was comfortable, using the bathroom in my room, but I did not want to because I don't know, I was very uncomfortable with using public bathrooms. But there
Hmm.
was this one day I had the slushy, and the slushy was just doing all kinds of things with my body at that day. And I was like, you know what? I know I cannot make it to the room. I'm going to this bathroom in this building. I don't care. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not going to fight my body and I'm going to let my body do what it needs to do. If I have to go, I have to go. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's like the blessing of getting older. I don't know about you, but for me, I just don't care. I'm like, I'm not gonna hurt my body just because I might be embarrassed. Like, no, everyone poops. Get
Everyone
over it.
poops. Get over it. Exactly.
Buy some poopery.
Yes. But I'm with you there. Like as I got older, I just stopped caring. The more age I gain, the less I stop caring about what others think.
Hmm.
And I'm at that point. I'm just like, you know what? If I'm in public spaces, I will at least wear clothing, and that's all. I will make sure I'm not wearing anything that I know will offend like a child. I don't care about adults. If I'm going to a space where I know it's going to be nothing but adults, look, I'm going to wear something lacy and be happy and be free and comfortable. Mind your business. But other than that, in public spaces, I'm just like, I'm going to be comfortable. All you people who just like, oh, you can't be walking around Walmart looking like that. I'm going to be in Walmart looking like that and not caring.
Yeah, have you seen the people in Walmart? No one cares. Like,
Right.
no one's caring anyways.
I'm a person of Walmart, okay? Would you like another?
Sure.
Let's see. Never have I ever forgotten to take drugs out of my backpack while on the way to an airport.
No, I'm way too I'm a planner. I'm very like I have a checklist. I have a spreadsheet of when I travel of all the things that I need to bring and everything. So that will never I don't think that will ever be a problem, honestly.
Wow, you are like very organized. A spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yes. I need to step my game.
I literally have one for like solo trips if it's just me.
Mhm.
One if it has like my husband, my dog. I even have like a Disneyland checklist. It's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why I
Okay.
admitted that to you, but
A Disneyland checklist is new for me. I would not have thought. Now I have to know one, what do you typically have on like your solo checklist, and what do you have that's different on your Disneyland checklist?
so solo checklist is just your basics, your toiletries, what clothes. And it really also depends on the trip. Like I'll
Mm,
adjust it to the trip and like the weather. So it's different every time. Um, but like Disneyland, you gotta have like your mini ears. You've got to have like hand sanitizer because grubby hands everywhere, sticky
mm,
fingers everywhere. Gotta have like what else is in Disneyland? Oh, comfortable shoes and like different insoles. Like the when I went to Disneyland for my husband and I went to Disneyland for Christmas. I think we walked like maybe it was like 25 to 50,000 steps a day.
ooh,
Yeah.
that's a
It's
good
a
workout.
lot. So you got to like bring that arch support and like, nice shoes. And there's just like, yeah, stuff like that.
You know what? I really do need to make another trip to Disneyland, or was it Disney World? I forget. It's some Disney, the one that's in Florida. I forgot.
Oh, Disney World.
Disney World. There we go. And the main reason why is because I cannot forget the turkey leg that I had the last time I went there, and that thing tasted so delicious, and to be turkey, it tasted like pork, and it tasted like a
Mm-hmm.
very, very, very delicious ham, and I'm just like, I'm okay with this. Like, I will eat poultry every single day if it tasted like that turkey leg.
For me, it's the corn dog. I have to have a corn dog. There's something about Disneyland corn dog. It's just really good. I don't know why.
Their food is drugged. I'm convinced now. It's
Mhm.
okay. I'll still eat it. Send me a turkey leg, y'all. I appreciate it. I'm joking. Please don't do that because I don't check my mail that often. On that note, Meliza, do you have any last words, tips, tricks, anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
I'm just really honored to be on here. Like, I love the whole idea of your podcast. I love that it's sex positive, and I did listen to some of your episodes, and they're great. They're so lighthearted, like, and it's not, it's not like sex is bad or like.
Thank you.
So I love the idea. But yeah, thank you for having me on. And if your listeners like me and liked what I talked about, hopefully, like, come check out my podcast. You can find everything at the Talkative Introvert podcast.com. Literally everything's on there. I'm not gonna like plug all my stuff. Just go to the website.
Right. And the info will also be in the show notes, people. I need to really do better at letting people know those things exist. I just assume if you're listening to podcasts, you know that the show notes are there, but people don't. Look at the show notes. Everything's going to be there for y'all. And yes, go listen to her fucking podcast. It's amazing. It's amazing. Very lighthearted conversations as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So on that note, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Meliza. I appreciate you. And for the listeners, thank you all so much for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. And just in case no one else told you this today, you are beautiful, you are worthy of happiness and joy, you are enough and then some. You may not live up to the expectations of others, but that is okay. You are only required to walk in your own shoes. May each day you live lead you towards abundance. With that said, love you all and see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Holiloquy podcast, where we step out and speak on sexuality. You can subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcasting app and find us on the web at www.holiloquy.com. That's www.heauxliloquy.com. Share the podcast with your friends and join the conversation.